Welcome to another episode of Market Money. Today we're going to be looking at, we're going to look a bit at the JSE rule book. We've seen over the last couple of months, maybe within the last year or so, 3 companies get suspended from the JSE in terms of trading. So we're going to look at some of the rules in terms of the requirements around financial reporting and some of the things that might have led to the suspension of trading. I think that's a topic that we'll go through for maybe the next few episodes of Market Money, at least at the start for our education piece. And then today we're going to be looking at Salada Foods. That's on the I think Salada Foods is on the main market. I'm so sorry. So that's going to be our episode for today. Let me just share my screen and get started. And of course, as usual, just let me know if you have any questions as we're going through. Thanks to everybody joining us from all platforms. And before we go any further, this episode is sponsored by our Grow Your Wealth conference. So I'm going to play a quick ad here, and then I'll talk about the conference a bit, and then we get into the episode.
The Grow Your Wealth Conference is almost here. If you're a seasoned or aspiring entrepreneur ready to elevate your business and personal finances by learning from experienced, impactful, world-class entrepreneurs, then this conference is for you. Grow Your Wealth is happening over 2 days in Kingston, Jamaica, with unique speakers, business networking opportunities, actionable teachings, a business pitch competition, and access to an engaged community. So save the date and get your tickets now. Tickets and more information are available at learngrowinvestconference.com.
All right, so again, tickets are available for the conference starting right now. So if you go to learngrowinvestconference.com, you can purchase our early bird tickets, which are 50% off. And I'm not sure how long that will be for, so get them while you can. All right. So let's go back to that here. And I mentioned, I'll get to our community groups later. So I mentioned 2 things we're going to talk about today: the junior market rules, and then Salada Foods will be our company in terms of our stock review for the week. All right, so let me bring up the rule book here. Just 1 second. So I thought it would make sense first to look at the notice for suspensions that we saw first, because usually the notice for suspension will mention the specific JSE rules that they are in breach of. So we look at that, we look at the rule book, the page of contents for a little bit, and it will go to the specific requirements about the financial reporting, because that's what we're going to focus on today. And then we'll go through the next few weeks looking at different aspects of the rule book in terms of requirements for listing, requirements for mentorship, requirements for maybe disclosures, and some of the things that companies are supposed to be sharing with you as investors. And I think it's important to know the rules, because if you don't know the rules, you won't know how to hold the companies accountable. And sometimes we may find companies list and they themselves don't know the rules. Right, so this is really to benefit everyone as we try to, just ensure that we are doing our best to build confidence in the market. So let me start with this one. I believe iCreate is the first one that we saw suspended earlier in the year. So look at that notice, look at the specific rule that the JSE mentioned that it violated, and then I believe we'll just go to the rule book from there. So that's what I'm looking for now. Let me go back to sharing my screen. I'm just looking for the notice of suspension. Okay, right. So this is it here. And it says here, so let me zoom in. So it says the Jamaica Stock Exchange wishes to advise the public that in keeping with the provisions of the JSE Junior Market Rule 505, ongoing requirements, Section 14, delisting or suspension, it has taken the decision to immediately suspend trading in iCreate Limited shares due to its failure to comply with the requirements of Junior Market Rule Appendix 4, Admission Agreement, paragraphs 2 and 4. So we're going to use that. We're going to go to that. We're going to try and find that specific rule first. And then we look at, or maybe we look at the requirements for financial reporting first, and then we try and find a specific one. So let's do that. So this is the JSE rule book. If you just simply do a Google search for Jamaica Stock Exchange or JSE Junior Market Rule Book, you'll find it and you'll be able to go through it. So let me just go through here. So we're looking for, it mentioned Rule 505. Rule 505, ongoing requirements, Section 14. Ongoing requirements. Section 14. Did I miss it? I think I did. Let me try and find it here. Okay, all right, this is it. So this one here, delisting or suspension, and the first one, okay. So this is it here, right? So it says, in terms of delisting or suspension by the JSE may, in its absolute discretion, delist or suspend trading of the admitted participating voting shares and other admitted securities of a junior market company for any of the following reasons. If the junior market company fails or ceases to comply with any of the requirements of the admission agreement or any of the statements made in declaration for admission or this rule 505, right? So this is the rule. It's saying that there would have been a breach of that would have caused the suspension for them. It alludes to an admission agreement. So let me try to find that. And let me know if you have any questions as we're going through it. I'm kind of doing this live, meaning I did not do any prep beforehand, unfortunately. So I'm hoping that you'll still find this valuable, right? 2 copies of original admission agreement here. Application for admission. Okay, so this is speaking to the admission agreement. Go back. Okay, so Appendix 4, admission agreement, paragraphs 2 and 4. Okay, Appendix 4, let's go there. And this might help some persons, I guess, navigate the agreement as well. So Appendix 4, declaration of admission. Okay, here we go. All right. So it's paragraphs 2 and 4. All right. So it says on admission and at all times, limitless. We are going through Salada. We're just starting with a little bit of time on the JSE market rules. Then we go into Salada. So the next couple of minutes. So we're looking at why companies would have been suspended and going to the rule book to see what rules would have been violated to help persons understand, one, what some of the rules or conditions may be for a company to be suspended, and then how to pretty much find that rule or navigate the rule book to understand why that would have happened. So that's what we're going through. Remember, Market Money is not just stock review. We do a little bit of education. We do a stock review, and we usually do an interview. We don't have any interviews, so we are trying to, make up for more time spent to actually learning how the market works and so on. So I hope that answers your question, right? So it mentioned paragraphs 2 and 4. So on admission and at all times which the company is a junior market company to comply with the provisions of Rule 505 as it regards to ongoing requirements and any other requirements imposed by the JSE in its absolute discretion from time to time. And I imagine here, because I believe for them, their financials were outstanding for a significant period of time. So I believe that's the one that I wanted to go to look at what the reporting requirements are. So let me go back to the content so that we can see. That one is for requirements for financial reporting. So part 4. Let's go to that. Okay. So yeah. So right here, so I believe at the time it was their audited financials and they had not done a quarterly financial either. So we'll just look at this and then we'll look at the other suspensions that we saw this year. There was Edifocal and then there was Equity Line. We'll look at what specific rule there, look at the rule briefly, and that will cover this section, all right? So in terms of quarterly financials, it says here, subject to paragraph 2, a junior market company shall submit to the JSE 2 copies of its financial statements for each reporting quarter of the reporting year, either in unaudited form within 45 days at the end of the reporting quarter. So for example, we're coming to the end of Q2 for the calendar year. It's not going to be Q2 for everybody. So for example, when we look at Salada, their Q2 ended in March, but let's say Q2 ended June 30th, they would have 45 days from the end of the reporting quarter to submit the financials for the quarter ended June 30th, right? That's essentially what it's saying here, to which the financial statements relate, or in audited form within 60 days of the end of such quarter, right? A junior market company has the option, in case of its fourth quarter reporting, to submit its financial statements in respect to that quarter to the JSE in unaudited form within 45 days, or in audited form within 90 days, right? So that's why sometimes you may not see, in some case, some companies may not release their Q4, but just release their audited financials, which includes their Q4. And so this is what companies are navigating to determine, I guess, based on their intent, what they want to do. I personally like when companies release the unaudited Q4. I think it's just easier to be able to assess the quarters differently, but it's up to the company here because JSE gives them the option, right? And let me see if there's anything else and this is speaking to the reporting standard to which they should publish the report. And then this speaks to what they should include in its financial statements, right? So part 4 is where we want to focus on to understand what companies are going to be putting in, what they're required to post, when they're required to post it, etc. Right? So I think we'll just look quickly at the one for the last one that we saw for, I think Equity Line was one. Okay. For Equity Line, it mentions here JSE Main Market Rule 408, so audited annual financial statement, right? So pretty much it's saying that, well, let's look at the rule, right? So we'd have to search for the Main Market Rule book here. JSE Main Market Rule book. All right, so I'm not finding Rule 408. Okay, here we go. Okay, that's speaking to a fine. All right, so the main market rulebook, of course, is a lot more than the junior market one. So let me try and find that one. If I'm not able to find it, then we'll just probably move on for now. Okay. All right, and then we see the one for Edifocal here, which speaks to Appendix 2, Part 4. Let's try and find that one. Appendix 2, Part 4. Appendix 2. Can I just search for it like that? Okay, so Appendix 2, Part 4, it's speaking to the financial reporting, right? Okay, so we covered that already, right? So hopefully that makes sense for those following me. Pretty much we see where if companies aren't complying to the JSE rules, the JSE has in their discretion the ability to either suspend trading. My understanding of how it works is that they would typically try to reach out to the company, give them an opportunity or a grace period per se, and that's why you'd usually see a disclosure for some companies where they say, well, if we're late, we'll try to do it by X date. Usually, though, if that X date is not met, then the JSE has within its discretion to suspend those shares, right? So that hopefully will give you some understanding as to what would have led to the suspension for those three companies that we mentioned. And what we'll do, of course, is go through some more rules over the next few weeks, just some of the things that I think will be important to understand as you navigate investing. And then we see what questions we have, and then we try to get those answered as we go through. All right. So let me know if you have any questions about that, whether watching live or on the replay. So let's look into Salada Foods now. So of course, I didn't do the disclaimer before, so I'll do it now. What we're doing here is for discussion, education, entertainment, and illustrative purposes only, and should not be construed as professional financial advice, solicitation, or recommendation to buy or sell any securities. All right. So we're looking at Salada Foods. That's on the main market. Ticker is SALF, and it traded firm today. Just a few shares traded at $3.72, but it opened at $3.70, closed at $3.70. All right. So in terms of what they do, they manufacture instant coffee, teas, and drink mixes for distribution in Jamaica and several international markets. So this was a focus for them at their AGM earlier this year, going into new territories, trying to grow their brand, trying to diversify their range of products, etc. So the company was incorporated in 1958 with a core manufacturing competence of spray drying, that is the conversion of liquid extracts and concentrates into an instant powder, right? Which makes sense here. Salada manufactures coffee and teas on its flagship brand, Jamaica Mountain Peak. I believe everybody knows that brand very well. And it says here it's certified with safe quality food level 2 certification, and it's the purveyor of choice for private labeling for instant powders for regional distributors, right? And of course, if you go to their website, even their annual report, you'll see just the different ways in which, or the different products or services that they may offer. Some you may know, some you may not know, but it's quite interesting, I think, to go through their range of products, and it's very interesting, right? So I think it's just a very unique company to look at. And as I've been saying for the past few weeks, we're trying to look at as many unique companies as possible, speak about the ones that aren't regularly covered on in terms of content on the market, just so you as an investor can start to look at other opportunities, right? So we look at their report here. So before we go to their summary financials for Q2, let's look at their 5-year, because it's good to kind of understand where they're coming from. So this is taken from their annual report for 2023. You can find that on the JSE instrument summary for Salada Foods. So in 2019, and I like to look at companies right before the pandemic and see where they are in relation to that point. So in 2019, it was 1.1 billion in terms of revenues. 2023, they did 1.4. So that's maybe 20 to 30% growth since then. Cost of sales, of course, will always grow in relation to revenues. Profit before tax has grown in the last 5 years. This looks like to be about almost 40%, from 167 million to 229. That's profit before tax. And then, of course, profit after tax for the most recent year would have been 179 million. It has their book value, and the book value from 2019 till now would have increased only slightly. Cash flow from operations would have seemed to have been at a high for 2022. For last year, it was 87 million. And then dividends paid, that's something I like to look at in terms of how consistently does a company pay dividend. They actually did do a dividend announcement this year. We'll get to that soon. But they're paying a dividend consistently. And we'll talk about whether or not I think that dividend should be more a little bit later. And then it has number of shares. Of course, they would have done a stock split. We'll talk about that as well. And then the share price you're seeing in 2019, it was $31.65. Of course, when they did the stock split, of course, the share price would be low. So right now, trading at 370. So we'll talk about the stock split a little later. Key ratios, their return on equity for last year was 16.4%. Earnings per share was at 17 cents for the year. Dividend per share was at 12 cents. So I believe that, no, I was going to say something there, but never mind. Dividend growth rate stood at 6% over the previous year. And they have year-over-year devaluation. I'm not sure what this relates to. I don't know if this is an exchange rate. So I'm not sure there, right? And you see some of their other metrics there, right? So let's go to their summary here. So for their Q2 results, revenues would have been 427 million for the Q, right? So in their report, it shows you the first half numbers. We'll get to that, but this is specifically for Q2 that we're looking at. So not for 6 months, just for Q2. 427 million for Q2. That's an increase of 8% from the same time last year. Operating expenses actually decreased from the same period last year. So that's actually a good sign. So they're able to increase their profit before taxes and their net profits because of that reduction in operating expenses. So that's something that I've been looking very closely at, how companies are able to navigate their admin expenses, because a lot of companies, I believe, would have been under pressure to maybe increase salaries because of what the government did, right? So we'll look at it in the report, but overall there was a decrease in their operating expenses. Then, of course, earnings per share grew from 5 cents to 7 cents. So that's a 40% increase. And their stock price is down 7% year to date. In terms of their balance sheet and cash flow statement, total assets increased by 7% to 1.3 billion. Equity increased by 6% to 1.06 billion. And their liabilities increased by 12% to 259 million, right? Cash flow from operations was a positive 189 million. So that's good to see. That means their core business, their operations is generating positive cash. So that's usually something that you want to see, that number being positive. Cash flow from investing activities would have been negative 8.7 million. And I wasn't able to get to work out the cash flow from financing numbers just based on how they did it in their report. So I didn't have time to do that calculation before now. In terms of today's trading, I mentioned before, $3.70 up to $3.72. There were literally two trades that took place for the day. 40,000 units and I think 250 units. So that was the total volume traded for the day. For the last 52 weeks, it's been as high as $4.15 and as low as $2.50. Market cap, of course, which would be the shares outstanding multiplied by the share price, would be 3.84 billion. Shares outstanding is 1,038 million shares. All right. In terms of their dividends paid, of course, this is a place that we'll look at. Do I think they could pay a higher dividend? Personally, of course, you know that I'm a dividend investor. So always look to see how companies manage this. Now, it did show on their key ratios dividend growth. I do think that especially in this period of most stock prices being down, I think companies could seek to pay a better dividend. But of course, companies are probably of the mindset that, well, if we pay out cash, if we pay out more cash in dividends, then we'll probably have to borrow money or maybe issue more shares to be able to raise capital to expand. Right. So I do remember them having, I think, maybe 258 million in cash. I'm not sure how they plan to use the cash. So of course, dividends may be one way to do it, assuming that they have no recent plans. But of course, I'm sure they'll say that they have plans to utilize that cash. I don't remember what was said at the AGM, but I'm certain that the question was asked about a dividend. I do remember one shareholder being very, very, very up in arms about it, right? Dividend was announced this year, payable July 4th, which is, I believe, next week, of 6 cents. And their total dividends for last year was 11 cents. All right, so that's what we have for them. So let's look at the Q2 report now. We just want to kind of dig into that a little bit and at least read, but hopefully they have an outlook section as well. I love when companies do that. So I mentioned before that the numbers that we're looking at was Q2. So their year to date would have seen an increase as well, 726 million versus 688. And their profit after tax would have been 98 million for this year. We spoke about that already. And that would have been a 32% increase from the same period last year. So they're headed in the right direction, right? So, I mean, now I don't know specifically where the sales coming from. What I'm thinking about Limitless question now is if I think that the coffee industry is dying, right? I'm curious to find out why you asked that question. Do you have any information that you think it is dying here? I'm not sure I'm familiar with it enough to say that. From my perspective, our coffee is usually one that is highly sought out, especially internationally. In terms of things impacting the industry, I probably would have to investigate that one and see from there, right? So it says what we looked at, revenues here. So it says during the 6-month period, domestic sales increased by 6.9%. So that might answer your question there, Limitless, while exports grew by 14.4%. Right, so sales are increasing here. That may not be just coffee, but of course, all of their products. Buoyed by the gradual expansion of their footprint in the Caribbean, including initial shipments to Trinidad and Tobago in March 2024. So their AGM in March, they mentioned that they're doing I guess, like some pilots in different countries, and so they're trying to essentially grow the brand in some of the Caribbean countries. And so you've seen this here in terms of Trinidad. Just doing a quick read here. Selling and promotional expenses declined by 29% from 44 million to 31.9 million as the company prioritized strategic digital marketing to support recent promotional launch activities in new export markets. So that's what have led to the 17% decrease in overall operating expenses, right? So you're seeing that here. Net profit attributable, we'll cover that already, right? So there's no outlook, so we have none to go through. So we did mention I would look at their cash. It was 215 million, not 258, which I believe I said. So apologies for that. And their accounts receivable has grown. But of course, when you are doing business, I think to a certain level, you have to allow for credit. So I wouldn't necessarily be concerned at this. The more you sell, the more your receivables are likely to grow if you're offering credit to companies. Their inventory levels are pretty much the same. Intangible assets the same here, investments the same, deferred tax same, retained earnings increasing, of course, because the company is profitable, and their accounts payable slight increase as well, and tax payable 19 million. So in terms of current assets to current liabilities, significant difference. The company has more than enough current assets to cover its current liabilities. That's something that, so we don't normally look at that, but in light of I looked at a balance sheet recently and realized the company literally had no cash. And so it's something I think I'm going to start paying a little bit more attention to in our reviews to see whether or not companies have enough cash to talk about whether or not they may need to borrow or maybe need to raise more capital, right? And then we would have gone through the cash flow. We mentioned they had a positive 189 million here in terms of their cash flow from operations. We're seeing the major differences here being the accounts receivable and accounts payable. And of course, profit from the period was greater, so that adds to it as well. Investment in property, plant, and equipment in terms of investing activities, so that's usually negative unless there's a sale of some investment property. And when I mentioned I wasn't able to get the value here for the cash flows from financing, is pretty much what you're seeing here, how they would have laid it out. Right? Don't think they included anything else here. Okay. I'm just doing a quick scroll through. Let me see if they showed their top 10 as well. Oh, do they show segment reporting? Let's see. I was hoping that they would have showed segment reporting here, guys, but I'm not seeing it. So what some companies do is they show revenues by segment, which would significantly help us to understand where they're making money, right? So let me see if I can find any data on the coffee industry since it was raised by Limitless here. Coffee industry growth. All right, so I'm just gonna share. I'm searching this real time, guys. So I'm not sure what we'll find. So I'm searching for coffee industry growth here. So it says this is Statista. Let me see if there's. Well, for 2023, it says here the coffee industry is growing. So that would have been last year, Limitless. But of course, I'm sure the company would have better data to be able to speak on this. So I did ask for an interview with the CEO or the managing director for Salada. We've not been able to confirm that, unfortunately, so we wait for that day. It says here, though, that the coffee industry is going through an exciting period of growth. This would have been to last year, with production increasing significantly in recent years. Jamaica is known for its high quality coffee and the country's unique terrain. I believe it wants to say here, has allowed the beans to develop an intense, complex flavor that is sought after by coffee connoisseurs around the world, right? So that's what we know it to be. So I'll try to find some more information about it. Let's see here what this says. This is I'm just looking to see if it speaks about the growth of the industry based on the question that we got. All right, all of the data is here is up to 2023, right? Of course, we're midway through 2024, so we'd have to wait to see here, but I don't think that the coffee industry is dying. I wouldn't say that because, I mean, as I said, based on almost every single person that I speak to, for example, from overseas who wants to visit Jamaica, when persons in Jamaica are visiting persons overseas, there's usually a bag of coffee somewhere being exchanged, right? So I don't necessarily see that as a concern. All right. So that's it for this week's episode. I'll say I'm wondering if there's anything that I wanted to talk about. Let me do a check over Instagram, see if we have any questions here. Okay, don't see any questions, but I think that's because Salada is probably a company that not a lot of people probably think about. I mean, you might know the brand, but I wonder how many persons are actually investors in the company. So let me know, those of you who are watching now on any platform, have you ever owned shares in Salada? Not whether or not you're a shareholder now, but have you ever held shares at all? I think I'd be interested in knowing that. Shelley, I see your question about what percentage net profit is from private label. I'm not sure. I would guess it may be a smaller part of their business. I think that'd be a very good question to ask. All right. So let me know if you've ever owned shares in Salada. And then let me see if there's any news that I may want to raise. So I'm going to our news feed on Telegram. If you haven't subscribed to our news feed yet, be sure to check it out. I believe there was a basis of allotment notice for the MJE bond. So we can look at that. I believe it was 100% allotment. But let me find that here. So let me share my screen. So it says here, yeah, so this was released just today. So this was their most recent bond. I know they've had a few, but this one was released earlier this year. So the issuer of the bond, subject to the prospectus dated May 3, announced that the basis of allotment has been determined and all applicants get their full allotment, right? So that's pretty much what the notice here says. I'm looking to see if there's any other story. I see a dividend declaration here from L.E.A.R.N. And I see a thumbs up for it. I know Caribbean Assurance Brokers has been one of the companies that I've seen some discussion around, and I believe we would have touched on it on one of our previous episodes. So they've had the dividend announcement so they've seen quite a bit of increase, so from 220 to 372, right? So year to date up 68%. We never looked at their financials. I don't think so. This is their first quarter, right? So this is May 15. let's see. So I'm seeing some persons here answer about the Salada. So NB Lee says, yes, I inherited the shares. That must be nice. That's nice. That's nice. Remember to talk about stock split. Yes, thank you for that. And Karine says, I've never held Salada shares. Let me see if anybody answered on Instagram. So I do say that when I went to the AGM, what I liked about them, and this makes sense, right? They had, and I think they were launching their turmeric. Oh my gosh, Renee would know this better than I would. But they had this turmeric coffee, was it, or tea, that they had. Persons were able to try it, and I believe we took home some packets, and we've been drinking probably at least once a week since then, right? Because I'm always seeing a box in our house, so I know Renee has been buying it, right? I'm just gonna do a quick look. So we'll talk about the stock split. Thanks for that reminder. So let's find out about it. 1 second. Yeah, is it turmeric ginger? It's turmeric something, and I'm not really a tea guy, honestly. My wife is, but as I get older, I find myself drinking more tea. All right, so it says here 2021 March 31st, there was a stock split. I was going to go to Ticker, but I find Ticker doesn't do a good job to show stock splits very well. Let me not show you that part. Don't want you to see my login here. But I don't think Ticker shows the stock splits very well. But let me just try. So Ticker is a tool that I use to just check on the US markets. If you go to ticker.com/learngrowinvest, or the link is in our Telegram group. If you want to sign up for Ticker, you can. Let me go to 3 years. Yeah, so you see it doesn't show the stock splits very well. What it does, it shows the post-split price. So whereas with a JSC, it shows you the original price, and the chart will drop. Ticker doesn't do that, right? So if you want details on the stock split, we have to go probably to their history. So I'll search for Salada Foods stock split just to see how much they split by and stuff like that, right? So it says here that on their 56th AGM that was held on March 18th, the company would have passed a resolution to do a 10-to-1 stock split. So the maximum number of shares that the company is entitled to issue be and is hereby increased from 500 million shares to an unlimited number of shares. That's normal right before you see a stock split. And that each ordinary shares be subdivided into 10 shares with the effect from the close of business from March 31st, resulting in total issue shares being increased from 103,000 to 1.038 billion, right? So that's what would have happened. So essentially their shares became multiplied by 10, right? So that all the shares in the company which are not yet issued and is hereby converted into stock units when issued and fully paid, right? So that was March 31st that they would have done that. So March 31st would have been around there, right? So 10-to-1 means it probably, if it's showing $5.82 there, that means it probably had a pre-split price of about $58. Let me see if I can zoom in here. Of course, you can always know when a stock split is coming. You see the volumes here, right? I usually see quite a bit of volume and activity leading up to a stock split. And then, so March 29 here closes 560. And then, so it probably would have been there. So $56 probably was the pre-split price. Let me see if I can go full screen with this. It's easier to see. So it would have gone up as high as $9.98. So it would have almost doubled, almost, after split, which is quite interesting to see. 2021 would have been in during the pandemic. So of course, from a high of 998, so from this point, it's now at 370. So it would have decreased about 60% since this point, right? So persons who would have purchased at this price have not broken even, right? So just bear that in mind, right? So that's quite a bit since then. So that is very interesting to see. And of course, I'll usually caution persons to just be mindful purchasing stocks after the company has announced a split, because though it may seem like it really depends, right? So if you have a lot of the shareholders pre-split not selling, then their prices, of course, will be low. Even if it goes up, they're okay. Meaning from the point of the announcement, this is probably another market money episode I'm going into here, in terms of the dynamic of the split, you know, when to buy, when to sell, etc. I don't want to get into that, but I'm just saying you want to really always be careful when you purchase, when a company is preparing to be a stock split, because even, let's say, when was this announced? This was March 22, right? So March 22, the price would have been $4.39. So even from this point, from it was announced, it would, the current price in 2024 is less than $4.40, right? So it'd still be about 70 cents less. So even before the announcement, persons who would have been shareholders after that have not been in positive as yet, right? So I feel like I kind of went off on a tangent there, but we said we were looking at CAB. So CAB Q1, because we wanted to understand why CAB's price would have increased. So their Q1 is showing growth in terms of revenue here. Let me see. So growth here, we're just going to do a very, very quick review, right? So net profit for the period is 3 million, down from 17, right? And the EPS is now 1 cent as opposed to 7 cents, right? That's profit or loss for Q1, right? So it would be safe to conclude that it's not the financials, at least. Let me check if there are any commentary to see what would have led to the performance for Q1. Okay, all right. So it says overall the company experienced significant growth in income and assets and profitability decreased relative to comparative period was due to major investment in the transformation initiatives, right? So they made an investment, and that's what would have led to their decreased profitability. The company's liquidity position remains strong, as evidenced by the increase in cash flows from operating activities and cash and bank balances. Doesn't say what is to come here, but we did have an interview with the CAB CEO earlier this year for one of our Market Money episodes. And we said we'd look at, let's have a quick look at their balance sheet. Cash is certainly strong there. Payables, accumulated surplus. All right, so we may have to do a stock review of CAB. I probably should do it justice there, right? So there was a dividend announcement, I believe, and I know it was an increase. So last year they did a 2-cent dividend here. I believe their most recent dividend declaration was significantly higher, right? So they went from 2 cents to 14 cents in terms of dividend, right? So that, I believe, is what persons were looking to know, that the payment date is September 16th. Now, this is something that I don't think I normally see the dividend payout so far away, because it was announced in May and being paid all the way in September. I don't believe I've ever seen it that far. May, June, July, August, September, almost 5 months away, right? So this may very well be, well, this seems to be the only evidence that we have so far, but that certainly is compelling in terms of dividend growth. So that may very well be what would have caused it, all right? Looking for any questions. Let me know if you have any as we prepare to wrap up. Not sure there is, so let me just inform you again. Tickets to our Grow Your Wealth conference is now available for purchase at learngrowinvestconference.com. I am going to play that video one more time. And next week, we're going to be hopefully having an episode on Economics 101. So I had the chance to host Taking Stock last week and had a conversation with Keenan Faulkner. And I've always wanted to do an Economics 101 for Investors episode. So he agreed. So I'm just pending his availability for next week, Wednesday. If he is, then we'll just go through the episode with that as our main topic. And that, I think, should help you just to understand some of the terms you hear all the time from an economic perspective. Maybe when the budget is being read, you may hear about some terms, some concepts that you may not understand. So that's what that video will be about. It should help you to understand just economic terms and concepts a lot easier, so that you can navigate the information that you hear and make an informed decision from the perspective of an investor, right? So I've sent him some things that I think is necessary to talk about, things like supply and demand, interest rates, GDP, monetary policy, etc. So those are some of the terms we'll cover, but at a 101 level, so you don't have to worry about it being overly technical. But of course, we want you to be able to understand so that you can use the information, right? There's also our investment challenge that you can be a part of. We're halfway through, but we still have 6 more months to go. Our investment challenge is $30 a month, and you have the opportunity to join us for our monthly investment calls. We're having a call in 2 weeks, right? So the one for June, we're not going to be able to have it because I have a conflict. So we usually push it a week ahead. And so you still have time to register for the challenge, to be a part of that call, and you'll be able to access all the previous videos that you might have missed. Join our private WhatsApp group and just get to accelerate your progress as an investor, right? So that's all the announcements that I'd have for now. So if there are no questions, I think we'll close the episode here. Thank you so much for watching and being a part of our community. Like this video if you found value in it. Subscribe to our channel if you're new, and I'll see you in our next episode.
The Grow Your Wealth Conference is almost here. If you're a seasoned or aspiring entrepreneur ready to elevate your business and personal finances by learning from experienced, impactful, world-class entrepreneurs, then this conference is for you. Grow Your Wealth is happening over 2 days in Kingston, Jamaica, with unique speakers, business networking opportunities, actionable teachings, a business pitch competition, and access to an engaged community. So save the date and get your tickets now. Tickets and more information are available at LearnGrowInvestConference.com.